Esaenai el heharim, me'ayin yavo ezri. Esaenai el heharim, me'ayin yavo ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai, oseh shamayim va'aretz. Ezri me'im Adonai, oseh shamayim va'aretz. Al yitain lamot raglecha, ayanum shomrecha. Hine lo yanum velo yishan, shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha, al yad yeminecha. Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha, al yad yeminecha. Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka, ve'yareach balayla. Adonai yishmorcha mikora, yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzecha uvohecha, me'ata ve'ad olam. Adonai yishmor tzecha uvohecha, me'ata ve'ad olam. Al mekoma tavo v'shalom. Shir Lama'alot, a song for those who ascend. Esainai el heharim, me'ayin yavo ezri. I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, from God, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way, your guardian will not slumber. You see, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian, your protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life. God will guard your going and coming, now and forever. May Lindy Greenberg go unto God in peace. Hatzor Tamim, Paulo Kichod Rachab Mishpat, Elemuna Ve'ena Vel Tzadik V'Yasharhu. Tzaddik Atadonai Lamidu Lachayot, Asher B'Yadcha Pigadon Koruchot, Chalila Lachazichonenu Limchot. V'yihiyu Na'inecha B'Rachamim L'Nivkuchot, Ki Lecha Adon HaRachamim Ve'Aslichot. Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam dayan haemet. Adonai natan, v'Adonai lakach, Yishem Adonai mevorach. Vehu rachum yechaper avon v'lo yashchid, v'hirba l'shiva po, v'lo ya'ir kol chamato. V'yashov ve'afar la'aretz shehaya, ve'aruach tashuv. Ela Elohim asher netana. God, you have given, God, you have taken. Blessed be the name of God. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, the judge of truth. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns to God who gave it. May our beloved soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal. And may God send comfort to those who mourn, and grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow. First, let me thank everyone for tuning in to today's service. We're so sorry that we can't be together. We know so many of you want to be here physically in person, but we are so grateful for technology and for your words, your texts, messages, emails, phone calls that you have sent to Lindy's family and you will continue to send to her loved ones, to show your support, to find ways, even amidst these crazy times when we can't be physically together, to still be together, to show support, to join our hearts together at this difficult time. So thank you. We are here today to honor Lindy Greenberg, Leah bat Aharon Verachel, daughter of Rose and Arnold Sector, Zichronam Livracha, of blessed memory, wife of Howard, mother of Rebecca and Marshall, Laura and Greg, grandmother to Riley, Max, and Leo, sister to Carol and Jerry, David and Betty. Lindy passed away Monday morning, the 22nd day in the Hebrew month of Cheshvan. She was 67. In fact, Sunday would have been her 68th birthday. In Jewish wisdom, there is a teaching. We are all destined to die. We share it with all who ever lived, with all who ever will be. Cry for the dead. Hide not your grief. Do not restrain your mourning. But let us remember, continuing sorrow is worse than death. When the dead are at rest, may their memory be a source of peace. Death is better than a life of pain, and eternal rest is better than constant sickness. As a drop of water in the sea, as a grain of sand on the shore, are our few days in eternity. The good things in life last for a short time. Wealth, health, even life passes away. But a good reputation, a good name, will endure forever. In keeping with Jewish tradition, not only are we here today to show Lindy the ultimate respect of accompanying her here to her final resting place, but we are also here to pay tribute to her good name, to her good reputation, for which she will be remembered, for which she has been loved through her life, and for which she will be celebrated long into the future. We are privileged that as part of the hesped, the eulogy portion of today's service, Howie will speak and Becky will speak. By way of introduction, I can offer these opening remarks. I will admit I did not know Lindy Greenberg very well at all. I did know who she was And like many people, possibly some watching right now, I once had her in Ramah Hebrew School as a substitute teacher. And so, in speaking with her family, and also I'm thankful to a few of her friends who reached out and shared stories with me in preparation for this service. It's not surprising that some people, the first thing they talk about, a first impression, was of her beauty. She was striking. I remember this even as a young kid, that she had a look to her. She had eyes that stood out, hair that stood out, but I think it was the kindness reflected in these features in her eyes, especially as a teacher for young students. She was the kind of person who, when she looked at you, you always knew she was so present in the moment. She never faked anything. She cared. The kind of person who truly was meant to be a teacher, who even in her sickness in her later years never lost the sparkle in her eyes, even if she sometimes didn't know for sure where she was. She was elegant and classy, but always understated in her appearance. In fact, understated in almost everything she did. That was truly her way, never wanting to draw attention to herself, always putting others first. I found it interesting that a story came out in our conversation with the family that it took her close to 20 years to get comfortable going to the door to welcome people in her own home, because she truly felt the hallway was too big, too grand, too showy, and that sort of thing made her uncomfortable. We'll hear more stories that conveyed these incredible aspects of her personality, how she was a perfectionist, detailed and organized, how she was selfless, never wanting recognition, always wanting to give gifts, but never wanting to receive them. For her, it was all about how she made other people feel. That was her greatest joy. Family, friends, students. She was the consummate hostess and a terrific cook of the highest degree, truly a great entertainer, embodying what we talk about in the book of Proverbs as an Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor. And in a bizarre way, because of the combination of her selflessness, her care for others, and yet being so perceptive, so intuitive, having such a high emotional IQ, she was able to work a room without ever wanting to be the center of attention. She knew everyone in the room, what everyone was up to, all of the interactions. She knew and understood people. It's probably why one of the best words I've heard used to describe her is a nurturer. In every relationship, in every aspect of her life, all the hats she wore, she nurtured. Whether it was as a supportive husband, Howie will speak more, but he conveyed to me that he truly felt like Lindy stood behind him always. If he wanted to entertain the idea of going somewhere for his job, he knew that she would follow, that she would support him. She was his encouragement. She kept him grounded, his anchor. Whether it was as a mother, and again we'll hear more from Becky in her eulogy, but it's telling also that her daughter's friends would tell you they have strong relationships with Lindy, that she engaged each one of them in conversation when they'd come over to the house, always taking the time to get to know them, to listen, to make each friend feel special, feel noticed, feel comfortable. She was able to recognize uniqueness in everyone she met, of all ages. Not surprising, this gift of being a nurturer continued with children, especially with young children. Even in her darkest days, the sight of small children would light up her eyes. Or maybe it was as a nurturer, as a daughter, taking the lead to help care for her parents, first when her own father was sick, then after he passed to help her mother, who lived for over a decade as a widow, and then to take care of her when her time came. Or possibly and finally as a devoted, truly devoted friend, always supportive, a great listener, a genuine, good person. It has been said you can tell a lot about a person by the company she keeps. So I think it is certainly worth noting that Lindy Greenberg was rich in friendship, that throughout her life she was surrounded by many, many dear friends who were loyal to her, always, because of the way she treated them. It's telling that each of her closest friends would probably tell you Lindy made them feel like they were her best friend. Truly rich in the love of friends. I can tell you that Lindy Greenberg, or Lindy Sector, grew up in Winnipeg in the South End in a house on Campbell Street, the middle of 3 children, Rose and Arnold, her parents, born November 15th, 1952, and a typical South End education at William Osler, J.B. Mitchell, Grant Park, then the University of Manitoba and McGill University in Montreal for Teachers College. Her home was progressive and liberal, traditional, not overly religious, but staunchly Zionist, where education was prized and where tolerance, acceptance, and a non-judgmental attitude to others were not just spoken of, but were taught and lived by example. Not surprising that this was a trademark of how Lindy acted with all people throughout her life. It was a modest home where Rose, Lindy's mom, made everything from scratch, from food to clothes. This relationship between mother and daughter, between Lindy and Rose, is also noteworthy. They were very close, and in many ways, Lindy and her hostess attitude, her ability to cook, to entertain, to welcome and gather people together, emulated what she learned from her mother. Rose was also very much ahead of her time from Regina, but went to university at the University of Toronto, became a social worker, again, emphasizing through action, through living it, that education was something hugely important. Not surprising that Lindy found her calling as a teacher. First in the public school system, then later in the Jewish school system. She enjoyed finer things in life as well, of course, travel and adventure, going along for the ride, whether it was with Howie all over the world, Europe, Asia, throughout North America, certainly Israel. A sense of adventure that was perhaps sparked when she was just 18 and spent a summer in Greece with her sister Carol. Bridge, mahjong, Pilates, and especially reading. A voracious reader who could inhale books seemingly in hours. They'd get on a plane with a new book in hand. Lindy would finish it by the time they landed. But of all the things she stood for, perhaps the greatest lesson of all that Lindy Greenberg has taught us and that we can take away from her life is that she never shied away from, but always confronted adversity. She never wallowed, she never asked why. To God we say, you who heal the brokenhearted and bind up their wounds, grant comfort and consolation to these mourners as they face their grief. Fill their lives with acts of loving kindness and with acts of truth, which serve as the genuine memorial to their dear beloved Lindy, wife, mother, sister, aunt, cousin, friend. The deep bond of love will remain unbroken. It's my honor now to call forward Howie and then Becky to share their words, their reflections, their eulogies.
Good afternoon. Okay. I noticed Lindy for the first time over 45 years ago at a coffee shop called Perky's downtown after a night cruising Winnipeg discotheques. I saw her profile at a table across the room. She had high cheekbones and a beautiful smile. I still remember she was wearing a camel hair coat with the collar up. When I asked a classmate who that Gentile girl was, he said, hello to. He said her name was Lindy Sector, and in fact she was Jewish. I called her the next morning and asked if she would meet me for lunch because I wanted to know if the other half of her face was as beautiful. So began a 45-year love affair. It was briefly interrupted after 6 weeks when she dumped me. She had plans to go to travel Europe for the year. I put a stop to that by talking to her mother, who was upstairs. I said to Rose that she's making the mistake of a lifetime. many of you would still not agree with my projection. Shortly afterwards, I began a 3-month elective in Toronto in surgery. Lindy visited twice during the first 6 weeks, and I finished the last 6 weeks with my father because of a severe stress-related illness due to loneliness. The first day in the OR with my dad, we scrubbed for 10 minutes, after which I dried my hands on a dirty paper towel before gowning. My dad said, "What the hell's the matter with you? Are you in love?" I said, "Absolutely." 6 months later, we were engaged, and Lindy married me at the ripe old age of 21. But Lindy had the maturity and sophistication of a woman much older than her years, intuitive and frighteningly perceptive. Alternatively, during much of our marriage, she referred to me as her third child. She raised me during the first 20 years of our marriage and was the wind beneath my wings. Although beautiful and mistaken on numerous holidays for movie stars, including Kim Novak and Annette Bening, she never went out of her way to be noticed. She was happy to be on the sidelines, classy, elegant, and demure, without ever trying. A close friend told me that nobody could work a room like Lindy. I said Lindy was quiet and not a schmoozer. He said she never missed even a subtle move, and her ability to understand body language and conversation was exceptional. A girlfriend of hers, who she taught with, referred to her lovingly as a witch because she could detect subtle clues and predict behavior before it happened. The girls and I were fortunate to be protected and guided by her wisdom and advice. She was a loyal and loving partner. Lindy would live anywhere and support any lifestyle that would make me happy in my career, without exception. She saw her role as wife and mother as paramount. Her needs never came first, and she never complained or wanted more. Happiness for her was a happy family. She never asked for anything material, and in fact was not comfortable, as Rabbi Leibel just said, for many years in her home. She thought her entrance hall was embarrassing to her, as it was too large and made her feel uncomfortable. She grew to love her home and maintained and entertained impeccably. The breakfast was a time of delight for her. In the tradition of her Baba Bassi and her mother Rose, she loved and respected her family, but enjoyed inviting friends who had no family or no one to enjoy the holiday with. A devoted wife and loving mother, she enjoyed a happy and full life until 55 years of age, when she sadly was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Although she accepted her fate with dignity and grace, we watched as the illness slowly languished and ravaged her for over 10 years. Although she took it on the chin like all of her life trials, it became more than she could bear. We will remember her as a kind, gentle, and humble lady who guided us with love, devotion, and selflessness. You've been a wonderful wife and mother. I love you and will miss you deeply.
When I sat down to reflect on my mom and who she was, I was struck by how much of her identity was wrapped around others and not herself. She was endlessly devoted to her family and friends. It's hard for me to recall a time where my mom used the word I. It was always about others. For those of you that know the book The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein, well, that was my mom. Give until you can't give anymore, and find joy in watching the people you love be happy. My mom worked hard both inside and outside of the house. In her early years, she worked as a teacher in Wellington School and supported my dad while he finished his residency. And later she taught elementary and worked as a substitute teacher. The free time she had was spent doing volunteer work, such as being on the PTA and working with the Guardian Angels. She worked even harder as a homemaker, managing us. Well, mostly my dad, and that was really no small feat. She dedicated most of her life to caring for us. She bared the emotional and physical labor of running a house and orchestrating a life for all of us that would maximize our happiness. As an adult, I now can look back and understand all the things she did that as a child went unnoticed. But that was exactly her mission, to set us up for success, to cultivate an environment that was conducive to happiness, love, and joy. It was clear she loved being a mom more than anything in the world. I never doubted how much my mom loved us. Every day, she would leave a note in our lunch telling us something kind, sharing words of encouragement for our day, or just letting us know how much she cared. And as we grew, those notes became cards with meaningful notes and thoughtful care packages when we moved away. She tried to make everything fun for us girls, whether it was homemade waffles in fun shapes with mini syrup jars for each of us, crafts galore, or new PJs and chocolates every Valentine's Day, decorating the whole house even when we were a bit too old for the holidays. Breakfast could be a celebration unto itself, with her ability to transform a meal into a fun experience, with of course only the best homemade food. To live was to celebrate the good times. We celebrated everything, every holiday, Valentine's, Halloween, birthdays, you name it. We spent our summers at Clear Lake. There are so many fond memories from those summers. A pivotal one was my mom's bag of treasure, a green garbage bag full of crafts, projects, and games for rainy days. Imagine being a kid and hoping it rained at the lake. Well, I did. The rainy days were magical. We could pick one item from this bag and get to spend time with Mom. Whether it was planning meals, outings, trips, whatever, there were no demands for her wants. All she wanted was best for us. I can't remember her ever picking a movie, a restaurant, or a store to shop in. If we went somewhere for her, it was only because we knew that she liked it. I remember many times dragging her into a clothing store that I knew she loved with Laura, and we'd corner her in the dressing room, forcing her to try something on to get something for herself. But more often than not, she'd get really annoyed and storm out empty-handed. My mom was proper and always seemingly in control. She ran a tight ship, but she also loved to have a good time, and that was never lost on her. She took me to my first rock concert, Paula Abdul, and many more, from Bon Jovi to Paul Simon. She loved to travel. When I started to travel for work, my mom was my go-to companion, from Boston to San Diego. She'd planned to join me in Iceland, as you may recall, around the time of the volcanic ash cloud, but it grounded our travel. Well, she wouldn't want to waste an opportunity to have fun, and I remember her saying, "We have the time, let's do something fun, let's make the best of it." And of course, the first thing that came to her mind was to recruit Laura for a girls' trip to New York. My mother was the antithesis of material. When my dad would buy her gifts, or shall I try to buy her gifts, she'd get mad and most of them would be returned. The idea of spending our money on her or having material possessions was never desirable. She had a rule about her closet: one new thing in, one old thing out. And looking back, we were lucky. If it was any other way, we'd probably be supporting my dad by now, given the clothes horse and bit of diva that he is. She was organized beyond. Everything in the house had a place, and that place should be respected. Cupboards were perfectly organized and with containers and Tupperware. Items were labeled, and closets and drawers were stacked with her perfectly folded, neutral clothes that were well tailored. I remember as a teen, she instituted a system where if any of her items were left out of place, she would throw them into our respective baskets in the laundry room that she had purchased and find us from our allowance. And it didn't matter if that meant dirty shoes were put on top of our favorite shirt. Her cleanliness was also not for lacking. We'd have to physically remove everything from our closets and rooms twice a year and spray and dust everything. And of course, always generate a bag to donate to charity. I have to say that Laura and I inherited this panache for organization and cleanliness. And all I really needed to say is that our husbands must really love us for complying with Lindy's rules of organization. She had so much pride in our home. It was a place for family gatherings with friends and fun, perfectly maintained and always fully stocked for last-minute visitors. She was ahead of her time. Now, Marie Kondo and the home edit are the rage, but Mom invented these ideologies. Friends would recruit her for purges and kitchen organization. Whenever Laura and I moved, Mom would love the challenge of trying to maximize our tiny spaces and organize every nook and cranny. Mom was moral and principled, fair and honest. She never took well to receiving things, be it compliments or gifts. It was always clear that it was better to give than to receive. I remember having a lemonade stand back when we lived on Waverly Street, and our cousins Jill and David came by as they lived down the street. And when my mom found out that Laura and I had charged them each a dime for lemonade, she made us go back to their house, apologize, and return the money. Why? Because giving was so important to her. Sharing what was even more important, and you certainly should never charge your family for anything, not even 10 cents. She never complained. If something bothered her, it would take us months for her to say something. We used to joke that if she broke her leg, she'd continue to walk around being as stoic as she was for months before she'd even let us know that anything hurt. My mom came from a long line of kind, open, and non-judgmental women. She was not the least bit competitive nor jealous, and I remember her often quoting her mother, "Be happy for your friend's success, all the better for everyone to enjoy together." I can never remember a time where she would say something bad about someone else or gossip. She didn't believe it was her place to judge, and those that knew her felt this openness. I recall many times when my friends and I would sit in the kitchen eating something she had baked from scratch, talking openly about our lives. We didn't have to censor things like most teens would with parents. We knew that not only would she keep everything to herself, but at some point she'd chime in with a hilariously witty and astute comment where we'd all end up laughing nonstop. She wanted us and our friends to feel safe and comfortable sharing, and we did. I remember watching the Sunday night sex show with Sue Johansson as a family in our teens. And for someone who was so proper, this may come to a surprise to most of you. But I realize now that she used this as a platform to make us feel safe to share. When we go with our friends, she'd say, no matter what, if we were drunk, if we were in a bad spot, if we did something wrong, no questions asked. She'd pick us up, no consequences. And she meant it. She was a confidant to many, known as a vault. And I miss that more than anything. The ability to call her no matter what the problem was and have a compassionate, loving, non-judgmental voice at the other end. And usually by the end, she'd have me smiling. When we moved away for university, at the same time, I knew my mom was sad to see us both go. But instead, she focused on how excited she was for us and found ways to continue to be part of our daily lives. Whenever we would return home, she would send us back with a duffel bag full of individually made, frozen, handmade meals and treats that would last us until our next visit. And she'd send care packages in between of cookies or treats for the holidays. Despite moving away from my mom, I spoke to her almost daily, and often many times a day. Sometimes for only a few minutes. It could be that I was asking help for one of her amazing recipes, what I should wear when I went out, or how to manage a friend. We knew she was always there, and during the hard times that I've endured in my life, I never had to ask. My mom would hop on a plane and be there the next day. During some very challenging times that I've had, I really have to say I couldn't have gotten through them without her. She held my hand, she sat there next to me, just being ever present. Well, of course, in reminiscing about Mom, we have to mention some of her essentials. Hand lotion in almost every room of the house, ample supply of rubber gloves, coffee by the gallon daily, books, books, and more books, lists galore. To open her desk drawer, there would be shopping lists, meal lists, to-do lists, lists of our favorite dinners that she had to have on hand, lists for parties that were in the making. Oh, and she loved cigarettes. Oh, the stories she used to share about the days of cutting class in university to go smoking at Sal's. She loved cigarettes. And although her strong will allowed her to eventually quit when we were kids, I remember she still enjoyed the smell from somebody else lighting up. My mom imparted so many gifts to us, and I'm not speaking materially. She instilled important qualities and skills for happiness. On my 18th birthday, my mom wrote in my birthday card, "Find something beautiful every day, and you will have a wonderful life." This is exactly how she lived hers. She never complained. She never yearned for more. She was ever content and focused on the positive. Her modeling this attitude has carried me through the years of her illness, being reminded never to take for granted the small moments that each day can bring and the joy in those moments. Sometimes you have to look for them, but they're there, always. My mom was incredibly private. Her dignity and honesty were some of her core values. When she is diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I recall she made a decision to share her news broadly, and I think we were all a little bit surprised given how private she was. But it was clear she would not let her illness define her. She would take it head on, being honest and upfront with others about her limitations. My mom gave a lot to so many people. It's hard to even begin to articulate the loss that Laura and I have incurred. With my mom, that was truly so wonderful, and ultimately became one of my closest friends. She left a void that is unfillable. But she also leaves us a gift. To know her, to have had her in our lives, was more than most people will ever have, and we will be guided by her ways always. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge her long struggle with Alzheimer's. I mention this because one of the amazing gifts my mom has given me was to demonstrate you can be happy no matter what happens. She taught us to define oneself by how you carry yourself through adversity and challenge, not by the adversity itself. Her disease served only as a reminder that happiness can be had despite hardship. I never heard her ask, "Why me?" or commiserate for herself, all which could be more than warranted. Instead, she picked her head up, forged ahead onwards, and didn't dwell on the negative. Mom, we're better because you are our mother. Your wisdom continues to guide us and make us better people. We love you always.
Thank you to Howie. Thank you to Becky for unbelievable stories, reflections, words, memories, lessons learned. It's my honor to recite, to chant the El Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer for Lindy Greenberg, Leah bat Aharon Verachel. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamtzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina, B'malot Kedoshim Utehorim, Kezohar Arakia Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Leah bat Aharon Verachel She'alcha Le'olama, Began, 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 edente menuchata, hanabal harachamim, hastirea beseter knafecha leolamim, utzro, bitzro rachaim enishmata, Adonai hu nachalata, v'tanuach v'shalom, hamishkava, v'nomar, Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure to the soul of Lindy Greenberg, daughter of Rose and Arnold, Zichronam Livracha, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that she find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Thank you again to everyone who is watching from wherever you are. We'll be concluding our service with the familiar Jewish ritual of shoveling earth into the grave. For us, this is a mitzvah, a commandment, a righteous act we do, as Lindy would have it, selflessly, without hope of any reward, to take care of someone as we believe we should all be taken care of to the very end. We believe our loved ones deserve to be buried by our own hands, kind, knowing, sorrowful hands, hands that once held their hands. We recognize that this can be a painful act, but we are reminded that it is one born of love and compassion for someone who meant so much to so many people. We will recite the words of the Mourner's Kaddish, and then we'll conclude with our private burial. Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevorach. These are the words of Job, the epitome of suffering in our tradition. God, you have given. God, you have taken away. Blessed be the name of God. May the memory of Lindy Greenberg be a blessing, as we mark that her essence will never leave our hearts and our souls. To the family we say, Hamakom yenachem echem betoch sha'ara ve'leit Zion v'Yerushalayim. May you be comforted and consoled among all those who are in mourning, or in our community who have ever been in mourning. The Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabbah. Be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabbah mevorach le'alam u'lamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudsha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata ta'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, huya aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who creates peace and harmony on high bring peace and harmony to us, to all Israel, to all of humanity. And again we say, Amen. Thank you again, everyone.